her. It was a pleasure to meet her backstage, and I can't wait to be able to bring her out here for all of you guys. So just so you know what's going on here, Finding the Faith is a show that explores what matters. So whether you're joining us for the first time or seeing you in chat is one of my favorite parts of the week. I'm glad that you're here. If you are new here, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. And everyone, make sure you like this video. We're live almost every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard here on Rumble. Every Rumble rant gets Jazz a treat at the end. And if you want your wholesome meme to be shared, DM me on Twitter before the show ends and let me know in chat so I can pull it up. And when I say wholesome, I mean, like, it can be funny, it can be a little bit spicy, but, like, you know, keep it clean. We have Faith Moore on the show, okay, guys? Don't make me look bad. But anyways, I'm so excited to have Faith Moore here. She is an absolute delight. She is as beautiful on the outside as she is on the inside, and I can't wait to get to talk to her. Hey Faith, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It is great to see you as well. I love your sweater. It's really pretty.
Oh, thank you very much. It's really cold here. I'm in New York. It's really, really cold.
Yeah, I'm also in New England.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah.
It's freezing today, so I just did my really warm sweater.
Yeah, that's why I had to, like, break out the flannels for Thanksgiving break because we went up to Maine.
Oh, yeah, it's probably much colder there than it is here.
Yeah. It was like, I don't even know. I didn't go outside. It was that cold. Yeah. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was lovely, thank you. I had my whole family here, and I didn't have to travel, which was nice. I got to host, and everybody, my parents and my brother and my brother-in-law were here, and it was lovely to all be in one place. How about you?
That's awesome. It was really, really lovely. There was, a couple of things that happened, but by the time I left, my baby nephew, he was doing so much better because presumably he gave me what he had.
Oh, well, yeah. You tend to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Share the love. Yeah.
Yes. But thank you everybody in chat for all of your prayers. It was literally the scariest thing that I had ever gone through. And you guys know, if you've been here for a while, that I survived being run off the road. So scarier than that is pretty scary.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's doing so much better. Everybody else in my family is doing so much better. And I am so looking forward to the holidays.
Yes. Holidays. Hooray.
In chat, PJ asks, does that mean that Freda is done with the show after this? There's Faith. We found her.
That's right. I'm here. They've been looking for me all this time, and I was just right here.
It was so funny, like, writing the copy and stuff for announcing the show, because I was like, spiritual journey.
Right. I know. It's weird in general to have a name that's a word, like it just generally, but I feel like anytime we're talking about faith and like religion, then it becomes even more ridiculous that my name is Faith.
I used to have an old friend named Grace, and whenever I would try to tell her man to give her some grace on this, because she was like still learning, it'd be like, how do I do that? She has it. She's Grace.
I know. It's impossible. It's impossible. And anyone whose name is a word, I feel your pain. But actually, I love my name, but it is one of those weird things.
Yeah. I can see how that would. And also, you have no E's in your name. There's no E's in Clavin.
There's no E's in Clavin. There is one in Moore, which is, I always say. So, I mean, I don't know what that means because I don't really know why. I guess there are no E's in Clavin so that we spell it correctly. I guess that's why there's no E. That's why we say that. So there is an E in Moore. So there you go. But not in Faith.
Excuse me just a moment. Hey, babe, your work phone is ringing off the hook and you left it in here. Can you come grab it? Thank you.
Very important.
Yes, he is an in-demand man.
Yes. We can't have that phone ringing off the hook. Gotta answer.
Yes, especially as a housewife, I am very, doing everything I can to support his career because he supports mine.
For sure. Same.
So getting into the, your religious journey, what are your first memories of religion?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. I knew you were going to ask me that because I've heard you ask other people, but I was not raised religious at all. But I do have several early memories about religion. So I think probably the first kind of way that religion was a part of my life is that when I was a kid, like really little, maybe like 2 or so,
Mhm.
we became friends with a family who lived in the building sort of across the way. And we became friends because the mom kind of like heard us play. There was like a communal garden in our building. And
Oh, I love that.
yes, and their building looked onto it, so they couldn't come into the garden, but she heard us, she heard me playing, the mom, and she sort of looked down because she had kids, one
Mhm.
who was my age and one who was like a couple years older, and she was like, "Oh, like maybe we can be friends," and she kind of like yelled over the railing like, "Hey,
Mhm.
like want to hang out or whatever." And so it turned and so we did and became our families became very very close, and the husband in that family, the father,
Mhm.
was an Episcopalian minister who
Okay.
was the priest in the church that
Mhm.
was the building she was in. So they lived in the rectory of the church.
Oh,
And
okay.
she was calling down to us into our garden. And so several times, I mean, many times we went
Mhm.
to the church service, even though we weren't religious at all.
Yeah.
And just I think to sort of support them and be a part of
Yeah.
the community and a part of their lives. And I even went to Sunday school sometimes.
Oh,
And the
cool.
funny story is that
Mhm.
one time the Sunday school children and me were
Mhm.
being sort of taken up to the altar rail to take communion. And
Mhm.
my dad saw this and was sort of like, he didn't want to offend, I think, his friend
Mhm.
by having me, a not baptized person, like
Yeah.
communion. And so he like ran up the aisle of the church and like grabbed me away from the communion area because
Mhm.
and later I think his friend was sort of like, I would have just like given her a blessing or something. Like I know her and I know whatever. Anyway, so that was
Yeah.
kind of a big part of my life. And we were over at their house all the time and like, in the church and in the rectory.
Mhm.
Um and and so it's funny because
Mhm.
actually like religion and particularly like Episcopalianism or Anglicanism um, has been a part of my life all through childhood because then after that we moved to England and I lived in
Mhm.
London for several years and I went to a school that was a Church of England school, and so like every morning we would at assembly we would pray. I mean we would kneel and clasp our hands and pray and
Yeah,
um,
I remember that from you had spoken about that in Saving Cinderella.
that right, exactly. So I mean that's
Yeah.
like a big huge part of my life, and we go to church like at the school, then we would go to
Mhm.
church like on important kind of holidays and things like that,
Yeah.
church. Um and even before that I had several friends who would just sort of take me to Sunday school or whatever, so it was like a big part of my life. So I guess those are kind of my earliest memories,
Mhm.
in addition to the fact that like I also knew that I was Jewish in some way, that my
Yeah.
father had been raised Jewish and had kind of, but he has written a lot of, and talked a lot about this, but he had kind of moved away from that because he felt that it was
Mhm.
he was a sort of secular Jewish person, and
Yeah.
I still kind of claim that as part of my heritage and my DNA, that
Mhm.
I am Jewish or half Jewish. And but growing up, like there was like one year where like I kind of got Hanukkah gifts, and
Mhm.
and actually when I was at the Church of England school, I was a teenager, I sort of had a rebellious phase where like I wore a Star of David because I wanted to not have to pray or not have to be a part of that
Mhm.
because it wasn't me, and I wanted to
Yeah.
be completely different, and whatever. Um,
I
so
love that.
yeah,
So you mentioned that your father was raised as a secular Jew and later converted to Christianity. How
yeah.
did that affect your upbringing?
I think there was a sense in my household that kind of like it, we were being allowed to choose, that
Okay.
that
Mhm.
we, because my mother was raised in the Christian tradition, sort of, like
Mhm.
she there wasn't a whole lot of kind of religion in her household either, and as you say, in my dad's household, they kind of went through the forms of
Mhm.
Judaism, and he had a bar mitzvah and all of these things, but he didn't feel that they really kind of believed what they were saying. They were just kind of doing the rituals and the things that they were supposed to do
Yeah.
is their kids or whatever. And so by the time I was born, they both were kind of, either, at some point maybe atheists, but just sort of agnostic, just kind of like,
Mhm.
we don't really know, we don't know what's
Yeah.
out there. We don't, it's something might be out there. We don't know what it is. And you as kids get to decide,
Mhm.
what you want. And so I think that like what that meant is that there was a lot of kind of conversation about just kind of spirituality and religion and, what it all meant. And
Yeah.
we were kind of allowed to have those questions, like, well, if there is a God, what would that mean? Like,
Mhm.
what would it mean for me personally? What would it mean for the world? And if there isn't a God, what does that mean? And if it's this God, what does it mean? If it's that God, what does it mean? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of just kind of conversation about kind of spirituality and souls and the afterlife, and it was just very sort of clear, like, we are not going to tell you what to believe. we're
Mhm.
we're not going to pick for you some religion
Yeah.
we don't
That's
have.
very much how my husband grew up as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I actually feel very happy about that. Like, I feel very glad that I was able to come to faith on my own, and to
Yeah.
know with certainty that, like, it was something that I really truly believe, rather than something that I had to kind of figure out, like, well, do I really think this, or is it just something that I was taught since infancy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of that, so
Mhm.
I definitely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
It's there's such a beauty to wanting Christ, to having
Exactly.
that, openness and that want and that kind of like hunger for truth and faith, and then being able to accept him because, we all know that he wants us
Right.
for whatever reason. Speaking about some of us, not you.
Right.
But yeah. So when do you remember, was there like a particular moment where you remember accepting Jesus as your savior? And what did that like look like for you?
Well, it happened because I was grieving. So I had a miscarriage before I had my oldest son. So
Mhm.
probably about 10 years ago now. And I during that time, there were several weeks when I kind of knew something was wrong,
Yeah.
but it, like, but every time I was going to the doctor, they were like, "No, look, still there, everything's fine, heartbeat, whatever." And during that time, I was every day, all the time, I was sort of like, "Please, God, let this baby be okay," and praying.
Yeah.
But I did to who? I don't know. Like, I didn't believe in anything in particular, but for some reason in that moment, it felt like I needed to pray, and so I was
Yeah.
praying, "Please, please let this baby be okay." And the baby wasn't okay, and it
Yeah.
didn't, he didn't make it. And the funny thing is, I mean, I guess that, like, I could have then concluded that there is no God, right? I could have
Mhm.
concluded, like, I asked and I asked and I prayed, and then this tragedy happened. But actually, it it made me believe. I believed it sort of immediately,
Mhm.
because and then when we kind of went through the medical sort of exploration of what happened, and it kind of turned out that, like, this baby was not going to be able to keep growing, just because of what the
Yeah.
sort of genetic issues that it had. It wasn't going to be able to. I'm sorry, I'm saying it. I don't know if it was a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
So he,
No, that's
yeah,
valid.
yeah. So I'll
Yeah.
say he wasn't there wasn't a way that he could grow
Yeah.
all the way to
Was it like failure to thrive kind of thing?
So
Or
it
if you don't
was,
mind me asking?
I don't mind at all, actually. And we were able to do this testing. And basically, what had happened is, I forget I think it's called triploidy. Um,
Okay.
it's when two sperm fertilized one egg, which is not a viable way to grow a human
Yeah.
baby. And so it, basically, like, there was a wonderful doctor who explained
Mhm.
to me, all the other doctors are kind of like, whatever, it's a first miscarriage, you're fine. And there was this wonderful
Yeah.
doctor who said, you know, a woman needs to know
Yeah.
why this happened, like, what's going on. Because I was afraid, like, oh, if I try again, is this going to happen again? Am I going to go through this million, like, and I know
Super valid.
some women do go through it
Yeah.
over and over and over again, and I really feel for them. And I was able to kind of discover that it was just a fluke, like, just a sort of
Yeah.
fluke. And the way he described it to me is basically like, there was enough kind of genetic code to start growing.
Mhm.
But then when it kind of went back to the code to be like, okay, what happens next?
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I don't know, because it had sort of too much genetic information than it's
That
supposed
makes sense.
to have, right? So,
Mhm.
and when I learned that, I was kind of like, oh, so I was praying, but I didn't have the full picture.
Yeah.
had the full picture, and he knew what was going on, and he didn't answer the prayer I was praying, but he answered a different prayer. He answered the
Yeah.
prayer that I needed at the time, and he answered the prayer of finding him,
Yeah.
and which I also didn't know I was praying, but I guess I really was. And and so from that moment I sort of
Mhm.
knew, okay, I believe, and I knew somehow that it was sort of the Christian God, and I
Yeah.
think, I guess, just again because I had a lot of experience with
Yeah.
that, and also in that time the whole rest of my family had converted.
Mhm.
So like I was the last. So my dad did, my mom, my brother, they
Mhm.
all kind of found faith, and I was the sort of stubborn holdout. And so I think when I had that sense of him,
Mhm.
I recognized the God that was there in the church when I would go to church, or that was there. I sort of knew
Yeah.
who that was. And it took me several years to then decide to get baptized.
Mhm.
I think I got baptized maybe 2 or 3 years late. I think 3 years later. So it took me a while to kind of be like, okay, like I really am going for this.
Well,
Um,
it's an important
yeah,
decision, and it,
right,
requires and deserves thought because, like, it's a very important commitment,
right,
and no one should enter into that lightly. And so it's
exactly.
a good thing that you didn't.
Thank you. Yeah. So
Welcome.
yeah, and actually, the person that baptized me was the man who was the priest in that church.
Oh,
I was baptized in that church by that same priest whose wife had called over the wall to my mom. So
that is so amazing.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
That's really incredible. Um, Stepping back just so we can touch on a couple of these comments here in chat. Our mutual friend Jess, whose show you're going on
yes, hi.
next Tuesday,
Mhm.
she's here with us. Her baby also had triploidy. Is
Mm,
that
yeah, I
okay?
think that's what it's called. Jess would know more than I.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's a lot of love for you in this chat right now.
Thank
So thank you
thank
for
you.
that,
And
guys.
I am back towards you. And I know this is it's very common. Miscarriage is so common, and
Yeah.
we don't talk about it enough. And it comes with a lot of shame that it shouldn't come with. And so all that love back to you guys.
I actually got misdiagnosed with having a
Oh,
miscarriage. Yeah.
what?
I didn't
What?
have a baby. I didn't
Oh,
have a
okay.
miscarriage.
Oh,
I didn't have I had like a totally other ballpark like health issue that
wow.
was related to my autoimmune disease. And they were like, "Oh my god, you have to go to the hospital. You have to go to like women and infants because you're having a miscarriage." And I'm like, "How can I have that if I don't know I'm pregnant?"
Right. I mean, I guess you could, but that would be very strange. And
Yeah.
oh, doctors, that's a whole other
Yeah.
story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even that like crumb of heartbreak,
Hmm.
just I think kind of allows me to have, much more empathy with the somebody actually, having that situation, which
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I didn't have, but also it was insane.
Well, yeah, awful to be told that, and scary to sort of,
Yeah.
what a roller coaster to be told suddenly that they thought you were pregnant, and then also that you're maybe losing the baby. So that's scary.
Yeah. My husband like beat the rescue there. And
Yeah.
he was like in a different state.
Good husband. Well done,
Yes.
husband. Yeah.
Oh. One of the people in chat want to know, why do miscarriages engender shame, and like why is that such a shameful thing? So
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I have yes, several. How long do you have? No. Okay. So two things. One is, I think that women are prone to feel guilty. And I think that, like, mom guilt is a thing. Like, I always say, like, you give birth to your baby and they hand you your baby and some guilt, because like it just
Yeah.
kind of goes hand in hand. And I think women are particularly prone to that. I felt incredibly guilty, and incredibly, because, and this is the thing that I sort of kept saying and like sobbing to my mother, I was supposed to take care of this baby.
Yeah.
Like, I had been given this sort of sacred duty to care for this baby, and this was my first job as a mother. Our job as mothers is to care for our kids and keep them safe and make sure that they're okay. And I had been given that job, and I felt that I had let the baby down. I felt, and the thing that I just kept saying is, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so, so sorry. And I just kept saying that to my child
Yeah.
because I, I felt like here was this innocent being that had come to into life,
Mhm.
there he was with his heart beating and, all the systems go.
Mhm.
And then he died, and I think
Yeah.
that there is a sort of inherent kind of guilt or shame to that, even though there shouldn't be, because obviously I was not, I wasn't like
Yeah.
drinking or whatever, I wasn't like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
I was doing everything I was supposed to do. So it wasn't my fault. And I know that, but there is still that sense. But I
Yeah.
also think that a
The
lot of
ingredients math just wasn't mathing.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the other piece is that the reason there's a whole bunch of silence around miscarriage, which I think kind of translates into guilt when you
Mhm.
have one, because people don't talk about it. So you're kind of like, what, like, why is this weird thing? Why is this horrible thing happening to me?
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with abortion and the narrative around abortion. I think that if we have to, as a culture, set up the notion that that's not a baby, and in order to, because we have to do that in order to make abortion quote unquote okay, to say that that's not a baby that we are ending the life of when we perform an abortion, then it's not a baby when it is lost via miscarriage. And so then we're not allowed to kind of express our grief, and we're not allowed to say, my child was there and now is gone. And I make a distinction between losing a child that's been alive, that's been
Mhm.
born for several years, and a miscarriage, because you haven't really met this child that you miscarry. So it is
Yeah.
more devastating, I think, to lose a child that has been born. But even so, this was your child, and you had
I
all,
think there, yeah. I
yeah.
can see how I've had friends who have been on both sides of that, very unfortunate spectrum. And it seems like the grief, the intensity of the grief is the same. It's just the what ifs are different.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it kind of, at least from, talking with them and sitting with them, and that it makes it kind of seem like both of them are just devastating in their own ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think that now being a mother and having two children, I you know I don't even want to talk, like, God forbid,
Yeah.
if anything was to happen, like, I know that the grief that I would feel personally would be larger because of the fact that I've now been their mother for all this time, and I know
Yeah.
who they are, and all of these things. But it doesn't change the personness of the baby that you lose in miscarriage. And I think that that's the problem, because I think that even a person, and obviously I don't know, there's probably some people that don't feel this way, but I think most people, even a person who philosophically believes that abortion should be allowed and is okay, I think most people who lose a wanted pregnancy feel the grief of that. And I think when you feel that grief and you exist in this world of, like, it's fine, that wasn't a baby to begin with, you kind
Mhm.
of know that it wasn't, and that it was, and so you don't know what to do with yourself. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's why there's all this silence around it, is because we can't talk about it, because if we talk about it, we have to acknowledge that it was a baby.
Yeah. That, I mean, that very much sounds like a situation that I had gone through with a friend of several years. We didn't always agree on everything,
Yeah.
especially politically,
Hmm.
but we had a lot of other things in common. And so when she got that DNC, because of the fact that she was having a miscarriage of twins, it was so much so that she just took all of the grief and kind of, I was like doing my best to be there for her, even though I am very, very, very pro life. I was like, how can I do to help? Like all of the stuff, and holding that space for her. And she kind of got mad at me because
Hmm.
she's like, oh, you just think it was an abortion. And I'm like, no, like you had a miscarriage. She's like, no, it was an abortion. I aborted them. And I'm like,
Whoa.
okay,
Yeah.
well,
I think
I think there's a lot of, I don't think there's enough knowledge around female fertility.
I totally agree with that. And I think one of the horrible things that the kind of pro-abortion side is trying to do, is trying to say that a DNC or, a DNC is always an abortion. And I think that that's ridiculous, because in an abortion, the baby's alive and the DNC kills it. And after a miscarriage, so I had a DNC after a miscarriage, the baby was already gone. And, you have to have one if your body doesn't kind of expel everything by itself. You have to have one because you can get an infection. Like you can get septic if you don't kind of remove both the embryo, but also like the placenta and all of the pieces that were growing in there that are not supposed to be there unless you're pregnant. And so I think it's a horrible thing that they want to sort of convince us of. Sorry, I can hear my child.
It's all good.
That they want to convince us of, that like, oh, well, if you don't support abortion, then no one will be able to get a DNC. It's like, no, like
that's
they won't be able to
not
get
how it works
for an abortion, but they will if they had a miscarriage. And I think it's just like the rhetoric and this sort of ridiculous kind of posturing that people are doing in order to prove their point.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of intellectually, there's not, there's not that worthiness unless there's the wantedness that goes with it.
Right. Yeah.
So do you have any memories that you want to share about London and how moving abroad with your family at a young age affected your spiritual life? I know you already kind of touched on that, but I was just like, when I read that you like moved to London, I was like, oh my gosh, my dream.
Oh, is it?
At the time growing up, when I was like growing up.
Yeah. So I had a wonderful, wonderful time living in London. I lived there from the age of 9 to the age of 16.
Oh, cool.
But if you had asked me, I would have told you, I hate it here. I want to leave. I want to go home. I hung a giant American flag on my wall. I was allowed to decorate my own room, and I hung an American flag the size of my wall on my wall. And trimmed the border of the ceiling in like stars and stripes, like some sort of weird border of like stars and stripes, which is super obnoxious of me, because then all my friends were British, and so then they would come over and like what hate us, like what's happening. So I was kind of obnoxious, and I always wanted to go home. And I had my best friend, I had sort of left my best friend back in New York, which is where we had come from, and so I was really mad that we had to not be, and because it was like, I'm ancient, so like there was no internet, and the phone, it was like long distance, it was really expensive to call, so we were only allowed to call each other for like 5 minutes every couple of weeks. So it was like really, I was mad that I had to live there. But looking back, it really was a wonderful time in my life. And I mean, I went to this wonderful school. I went to this wonderful British school, that was just completely I could have gone to the American school, but I didn't. And it was this, it was a Church of England school, and it was 3 kind of British row houses together. And there were secret nooks and crannies, and there was a basement and all. I mean, it was kind of it wasn't like Hogwarts, because it wasn't like a castle, but it was kind of just I don't know, maybe where the Narnia kids might have gone to school in London or something. I don't know. It was very kind of lovely and just sort of just right for me. And I miss it a lot. And the thing that I really am mad about is that on coming back, in my kind of early 20s, I got very, very into Henry VIII and his wives and Tudor England, which may come up if we talk about Episcopalianism, but I didn't know anything about that while I actually lived there. So I'm very mad because I didn't get to go to any of the places that I now want to go back and go to. So I'll have to go back at some point. I loved it there. We had a great time, even though I said I hated it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I was born in Ireland, and I have a lot of I have a lot of family over in Europe.
Oh, cool. Yes, Ireland. Yeah. My part of my family is from Ireland, and so we have gone to Dublin a few times, and it's beautiful there.
Yeah. I haven't been back since I'm an age where my brain can remember it. But I remember that there was this little dog that I took a nap with on his little cushion. It was one of those Irish dogs. And then I just remember green and rain.
There's a lot of rain there. It rains a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. And I frequently am whenever it's kind of raining and not super cold, but just a little chilly. And then I'm oh, it feels like London. Okay. I feel like I'm at home.
That's awesome. Somebody in chat said that you were with hanging up the flag and everything, that you were going to start another Revolutionary
Yes,
War.
yes, I was going to. My friends were going to come and fight me.
Oh. And then there's some talk about how you're a lot like your brother with like speaking with your hands and like your upbeat cadence and everything.
Yes, well, it's funny because my brother and I are 8 years apart. I'm 8 years older, and in a lot of ways, we grew up in different families. Like, I mean, it's the same thing,
Mhm.
but like, things change
Yes,
over
I
8
yes,
years, and so
absolutely.
in a lot of ways, like we grew up in sort of very different circumstances. But I think we are still very similar.
I think that's like very much like the nature and nurture part of things.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
We are definitely brother and sister. We are definitely related.
Oh. So what was the process of converting to your Episcopalian faith like?
Well, fairly easy. I mean, I think so. Episcopalianism was kind of where we all kind of were at that point. Like,
Mhm.
and I think, the caveat here is that like the Episcopal Church has kind of become very woke, and I, don't. It's the church I was baptized in, and I guess
Mhm.
sort of still what I am, but I am frustrated with it at this point. But at the time, that's kind of where my family had kind of ended up, and
Mhm.
the kind of church that they went to. And again, this other family that like I had known since
Yeah.
toddlerhood. And so I think it was a fairly kind of seamless transition. Like, I just sort of, once I had that realization, like after the
Mhm.
miscarriage and everything, I started going to church. And there was a lovely church in my neighborhood that, at the time was very, very wonderful and welcoming. And I just kind of started going, and that was a
Mhm.
little scary because I didn't really
Yeah.
know what to expect or what was going on. And I have like social anxiety. So I was kind of like,
Same.
oh, like, here are these people that all know each other and I'm gonna go. But I mean, one of the wonderful things about church is that like you're supposed to kind of welcome new people. So
Yeah.
I started to go, and um, and sort of started to get involved. And I mean, I still feel like I don't know everything.
Mhm.
I still don't know all
Yeah.
of the rules and all of the right words and all of the different things that I was supposed to know.
Same.
At the time, I kind of felt very much that way. And I remember one time when I was being asked to kind of carry like the communion wine and the
Mhm.
whatever. I think I was carrying the wine like up to the front, and I said to the usher, I was like, "Well, I'm not baptized. Is that okay?" Like, I didn't know like what it was
Yeah.
okay, and he was like, "It's fine. You're not like drinking it." Like, I was like, "Okay." So and then and I think then I kind of decided like, okay, this is what I want to do. And so then I kind of met with that priest, and we kind of had
Mhm.
a whole thing where he sort of taught me or like asked me to make sure
Mhm.
like do I believe in these certain things, and do I accept Jesus, and all all the things that are like
Yeah.
pretty much baseline for just joining the faith.
Yeah.
And it turned out I did, so that was good. And
That's
then
good.
yeah, and then I was baptized in a private ceremony with just that priest and my family, like my parents and my
Mhm.
brother. My brother is my sponsor, which is kind of like my godparent, except
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not a child, so I get to have a sponsor instead of. So I like to say that. So Spencer is my sponsor, which is very fun to say. And
Yes, it
yes,
is.
so he is essentially my godfather, but that's weird because he's also my brother. So he's my sponsor, and
Mhm.
my kid was there. My kid was like 3 at the time, and
Aw.
husband. And so yeah, and then I was baptized and kind of kept going along. It's a kind of interesting thing. So my husband is not
Mhm.
religious at all. So I and we are raising our kids to also to choose. And so it's sometimes a sort of lonely journey, in the sense that
Mhm.
like, if I go to church, I go by myself. When I
Yeah.
go to church, I go by myself. And so that's been tricky, but generally it's been good. The whole thing
Well,
has
that's
been good.
good.
Yeah.
Did you have to, just out of your curiosity, because you might recognize this, one of my best friends is an Anglican. She sent that to me for my birthday. But did you have to go through like taking any classes or anything? Because I knew that she's kind of been going through the process of converting to Anglicanism, and where she has to take a lot of like different classes to like learn about the different stuff.
Yeah, I didn't actually, because I think I was sort of having this private baptism with this family friend, and so
Okay.
I sort of had to meet with him several times and kind of
Okay.
learn what I needed to know, and make sure that I really wanted to do this and that I believed. And yeah, I had kind of explored baptism at the church that I was going to,
Mm-hmm.
and that process I would have had to go to a formal class, because that is how they did that. But
Yeah.
I ended up kind of souring on that church, and that experience was part of it. They kind of were like, yeah, we want to baptize you, and then like didn't didn't help me, and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of, I was kind of like, you should want me to do
Yeah.
this, like that, and if you don't, then I don't want to do it with you. And so
Super valid.
yeah, thanks. So I sort of went back and found the family friend. And so I guess it was the same thing in the sense that I was learning from him, but I didn't have to go to a formal class.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because I know they're different. Like they're different, but there's also a lot of like crossover. It seems I'm neither an Anglican or Episcopalian. I'm kind of some Protestant something.
Yes. Well, so the reason I said we might come back to Henry
Mhm.
VIII is because another reason why I was sort of drawn to this church, which is very silly and nerdy, but God works in mysterious ways.
I love nerdy things.
Yes, I got into Tudor history. So Henry VIII,
Hmm.
his wives, is the dynasty of the Tudors, and it was under the reign of Henry VIII that the church split from Catholicism,
Oh, okay. Hmm.
and England adopted the Church of England, which is the
Hmm.
Anglican church. So, and Episcopalianism is sort of like offshoot of that in the sense that it's not in England, but it is essentially the same as far as I
Okay.
understand it.
So is like Episcopalian like the kind of like Americanized?
I think it's like the world version.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I think,
Okay.
like, now I don't know what I'm talking about exactly, because I don't know too much about Church of England at this point. But it's basically
Same.
essentially it's like the church that happened during the Reformation, because
Hmm.
they were breaking from the Catholic Church and
Yeah.
forming this new church. And in England that happened under Henry VIII, because he wanted to divorce his wife, Catherine of Aragon, and marry the newer model, Anne Boleyn.
I
And
mean, technically, like it's less messier than like beheading them.
yeah, well, he did that too.
Yeah,
So
I know.
fortunately, just was like checking off all the ways that one could get rid of one's wife. But at first, yeah, he just decided to like tear the entire country apart, and start a whole new church. But yeah, he gets a bad rap because like he was trying to like get rid of his wife and marry someone else, but like there were other actual religious reasons why
Mhm.
why they did that. But anyway, that's the church, like the Anglican church,
Okay, okay, that makes
and
sense.
it's the same essential thing as Episcopalianism.
Okay, because I was like, I was like doing research and I was like trying to understand the difference, so I didn't like say something like I didn't like they're basically the same thing, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I again, like
Mhm.
I'm like 6 years out of baptism, so
Yeah,
I'm still learning as well. So like, I
yeah,
definitely am not the definitive answer on Episcopalian beliefs or at all.
I feel that. I think that sometime coming up, probably in 2024, I'll do like a Reformation episode because that's something that's like super interesting to me.
Yes.
But I'm gonna need time to like really like dig into it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, let's check in, because I love that time period as well, and it's super fascinating. So
yeah,
yeah.
I love history. It's better when my husband explains it to me, like when it comes to history, because I'm just like, okay, hold on, I gotta focus. Like, can't get lost in your eyes. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, no, it's yes, exactly.
But he's like so passionate, like understands like all of the details, and I'm like, okay, thanks.
That's amazing. No, because I hated history like in school, and I was terrible at it, and I couldn't understand my textbook. And then I read a really trashy novel called The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa
Mhm,
Gregory, and it's all about Anne Boleyn and her sister Mary.
mhm.
And for some reason I was just like, I wonder which of this is true. like, I wonder what part of this is true and what part of it is not. I mean, it's like a terrible book. Like but for some reason
But it was also like super massive. Like I
super,
remember that like on all the shelves of like
oh,
Borders,
yeah.
and that's like aging us both. So I apologize.
No, yeah, well, no, that's okay. I own it at this point. But yeah, no, I mean, yes, very, very popular book, but also very bad from a writing perspective. But
Okay,
but
haven't
it
read it.
that's fine. But for some reason it really grabbed me, and then I kind of read
Mhm.
a history book about the same sort of people,
Yeah.
and I was just hooked. Then I was hooked, and now I've read every single thing.
Okay, cool. I love intermediate fiction. There used to be the series about, I'll tell you what the name of it is later just because it literally doxes me. But
Okay, great.
it was all about like the neighborhood I grew up in.
Ah, yes.
So
Okay,
it was really, really cool.
that is cool.
Um so when it comes, to like the day-to-day of walking in your faith, what does that look like for you?
That's such a good question. It's a tricky one right now because the truth is that during the pandemic, that
Mhm.
church that I was going to and I parted ways. And it has been very hard for me to find another church that I can go to that
Yes.
isn't preaching something that I find sort of abhorrent to be preaching. I really believe that you shouldn't preach politics from the pulpit,
Yes.
any side. Like, even if I agree with you politically, I don't want to hear that from the person standing in the pulpit giving a sermon.
It feels crass for some, like I can't put my
Totally.
finger on it because I'm new to this stuff, but it feels crass.
Well, I just think
It's
like
like
it alienates people
yeah.
for no reason, and it's I don't know, I guess to my mind it's sort of worldly. Like, it's not what we're supposed to be thinking about when we're in church. We're supposed to be kind of above those things and into
Yeah.
the big kind of universal things. And here I live in New York, and here everything is very, very woke and very
Yeah.
sort of anti anything that doesn't check all of the kind of liberal boxes. And so for me at this point, what it means to kind of walk in my faith is very tricky. So I read my Bible every day. I
Mhm.
I pray every day. I have sort of certain times in the day when I try to pray and different ways and kind of meditate on different things. And then
Mhm.
I kind of, I don't know what this is called, like church shopping. Like, then I sort of try to go to different churches and try to find one that works for me. But I'm
Yeah.
really struggling with that. Just totally, to be totally honest, I'm really struggling with that at the moment. I think because I am drawn generally to the
Mhm.
sort of Episcopal liturgy and the way that an Episcopal service goes,
Mhm.
I'm seeking that. But that, at least here in New York, is
Yeah.
incredibly political, and I don't want that. And so, I think there are other churches I could go to that would be less political, but not really my style in terms of
Yeah.
what's going on during the church service, just for me personally. So I think, yeah, I mean, that question is sort of tricky for me at the moment, but it's something I'm kind of like working on at this point.
Yeah.
And because
As a
yeah, go ahead.
As a fellow East Coaster, I totally feel you on that.
Yeah.
Like so much. As far as like the closest thing to a church service that we've kind of been doing lately as a family is he's probably gonna make fun of me later for saying this. But I have some friends in Hawkhound, we have mutual friends there,
Yeah.
and they do these amazing Hawkhound Bible studies where
Yeah.
they get
I
like
drop in on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
where they like get beyond the fluff and they actually dive like deep into the word and talk about it and what that means for like the time period that we're living in and like all like
Yeah.
it's amazing.
That's
Absolute
great.
chef's
Well, I
kiss.
should try that because I do think, like, yeah, I think the thing that is missing for me right now is the sort of the community, like
Yeah.
in community. And Jesus says, like, whenever one or two or two or three are gathered
Mhm.
together, that's a church. But it's like I'm only one, so that doesn't count. So I need
Yeah.
I need to that's something that I'm really sort of seeking right now, is like that community aspect. So I'll have to drop in on the Bible study.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really, really awesome. I'm pretty sure that Conspiracy Pod is currently in the book of Ezekiel, and then I believe that Quarks of Creation is in the book of Genesis.
Ooh,
Y'all
okay.
are in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Yes. Tell us what to do. What are we reading? Yeah.
And then there's like this whole like Discord like community where even though it's not in person, it's still like, how many times do we like know people that live like right across the street practically that we don't get to like see in our daily lives or like our weekly lives just because we're so busy.
Yeah.
So
So true.
it's been really great with that. So how does your family's spiritual journey interplay with yours when it comes to walking with God together?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like my family of origin, right? Like my
Yes.
parents and okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think at this point, it's a good question. I mean, I don't really know the answer to that. I feel like when I am home, when I go home,
Mhm.
then we go to church together. And I mean, it's interesting because my current family, like my husband and my
Mhm.
kids, like
Yeah.
we aren't religious as a family.
Mhm.
So like, at table, like we don't say grace or, that kind of thing where even though
Mhm.
like I might to myself, but that's not, all of those rituals are not part of our life. And so
Yeah.
then when I
They
go
take
home,
time to like build too.
yeah, but also like, that's not, we're not raising our kids that
Yeah.
way. And so, it may become something that they want to do. And then, because they know like mommy believes this and that, and daddy believes this
Mhm.
and that. So, they may decide that they want to do this. And then that might happen. But I guess, so when I go home, um, then all of those things do happen. And
Mhm.
that's a kind of interesting piece. And it's interesting because it's not something that happened as a child for me, right?
Yeah.
They came to faith as later when I was an adult.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of nice to sort of be in a family where that is happening, or like we'll go to church or, we'll pray or whatever. But I think,
Yeah.
it, it's not like a huge, I don't think there's like a huge kind of connection between like their faith journey and my faith journey, except in the fact that my brother is my sponsor, which is
Okay, that makes
forever.
sense.
Like in the
Yeah.
sense that if I'm struggling with something and I don't, I'm confused about something that's spiritual, or I'm struggling with
Mhm.
something, then I go to him, not only because I love him and he's my brother and he's very, very smart and I know he's going to know the
Yeah.
answer, but also because like that's our relationship now. Like that's his job is to like answer
Okay, that makes
if I
sense.
have that. So that's one way that we're kind of connected about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I traditionally go to like your brother's like archives of his podcast to
Yes.
solve my own life things too.
Exactly. Same thing. Yeah.
He seems like he's a really, really sweet guy. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him yet,
Oh,
but
he's fantastic and so much smarter than me. And like I don't even understand half of the things that he knows, but we didn't get along very well growing up because I was really obnoxious to him, because when your 8 years younger brother is smarter than you, like it's
yeah.
hard to handle. But now we love each other very much and we get along really well.
That's awesome. I can definitely see how that would be a bit tricky.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. But we're good now.
So when it comes to explaining, to your children how like mommy explains this and daddy explains
Mhm.
I mean, sorry, mommy believes this and daddy believes that.
Right.
How do you go about doing that? Like what does that look like?
Yeah. It really is kind of that. And mostly it comes up, so I don't talk too much about my kids here in
Mhm.
public, so I will just sort
Okay,
of say
totally
what
valid.
I say and
Mhm.
not what they might say in return.
Mhm.
So I it's kind of that. Like if sometimes I'll pray in front of them, or like, sometimes if something scary has happened and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, thank God, like, thank you, God, like, or whatever, like,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. Or like, when it's bedtime, I might say a prayer over them or something like that.
Mhm.
And so they kind of hear those things. And when I'm going to church, they have the option to come with me or not come with me. And then we can talk about those things. And we have a children's Bible that they read, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's, yeah, like if they have a question,
Mhm.
then I just say, well, like for example, if they're like, if they were to say, is there God? You know, I would say, well, I believe that there is, and I would sort of talk about,
Mhm.
why I think that, and the Bible, and what
Yeah.
answer is, and then I would say, but daddy might think something else, so you can ask him. I try not to speak for my husband, and and I think I feel okay with that. I mean, I think there's sometimes I feel sort of sad that we don't all get to sort of participate that in this together. You know, there's that lonely
Yeah.
piece, but mostly I feel really good about the fact that I get, as we were talking about before, that I got to come to this on my own and to
Yeah.
really kind of know that I believe this for sure. And I feel okay and happy with the fact that like that my kids are going to have the same journey and hopefully they find their way. And if they don't,
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
One of the biggest things that my grandfather was a massive proponent of was free will.
Yeah.
And I saw that in all of the touchstones of his life, even though he was very, 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 very much an Irish Catholic.
Right.
So I can definitely, see the importance of that. And that made me feel so much safer to explore religion on my own too.
Right. Yeah.
Just knowing that like that love was there and that understanding was there.
Yeah.
And it's really great that your kids are going to have that love and support no matter, which denomination or which way they decide
Yeah,
things.
exactly. Yeah. So I feel okay about that.
Now, how did your mother Ellen impact the way you approach motherhood?
Oh my goodness. Well, again, here's another person that is very private and therefore I don't talk too much
Okay.
specifically about her because I don't think that she would want that. And it's her business.
Yes, absolutely.
But I was raised by a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that has impacted me hugely. Both in sort of knowing that that's what I wanted to do and that it was fine to do that and that it was worthwhile to do that, but also I reaped the benefits of having a stay-at-home mom, of which there are many.
Yeah.
There was always somebody there. There was, if I was sick, there was someone who could take care of me. Someone she
Mm-hmm.
knew, like what homework was happening, and helped with play dates, and she was there, and she really knew, and she's a really amazing, just kind of homemaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like the house was beautiful and the food was on the table, and at Christmas time the decorations were impeccable and still are. So I feel like I learned everything about motherhood from my mother. I think that there's nothing that I didn't learn, and I still I'm still kind of like, oh, this is happening with my kid, like what is this, what does this mean, and she's kind of, like, talking me through it. It's okay. Like this is what I think you should do. So it's totally like an invaluable experience.
She sounds like such an ultimate blessing.
Oh yeah, I have the best mom. Sorry.
Moms are really, really awesome.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Shout out to all the moms in chat here tonight.
Yes, all the moms.
Time.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I did have before we got into talking about Christmas Carol, which I am... Wait, how many chapters are in that book?
I think 12, maybe.
Something. Okay. Okay. So I'm almost there.
Okay. Or no, sorry. 12 is totally wrong. Like 20 or something like that.
Okay. So I'm about halfway there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't wait to, dive into and get into it more.
It's the perfect season for it. You were
It really is.
Now it's the Christmas season. So you're all set.
Just so everybody in chat knows, the link is in the description below. I highly recommend it. I myself got the audiobook because we were going to be doing a lot of traveling. I love the narrator. She does such a wonderful job.
Oh, good.
It's beautiful at every touchstone, and you guys should definitely grab yourself a copy. And I mean, gift giving hack, grab yourself at least 2, one for yourself, one for somebody in your life that has good taste,
And secret thing that you're going to hear first and nowhere else until later this week. If you want me to sign the book, like I can't sign the physical book, but I can sign like a sticker that goes in the book. And it's all up there on my website, hiding right now, but it's not hiding. You just have to go find it. You just go to my website, which is faithkmore.com. And there's all
which is also linked.
Good. Well done. Thank you. So yeah, just go there and it's there, and you can, it's already there. It's technically like for the month of December, but because it's about gifts, but you can give yourself a gift too. So anyway, if you go on there, it's got all the information to get you one of those. So do that. That'll be super fun.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, like that's amazing. Like that's,
that makes a good gift, right? You can like give them this book, which is great for Christmas, but also it can be signed by the author. So
yeah, that's incredible. And then if you need to have a handmade component in it, you can just like make a little bookmark, do a little embroidery, and then boom, there you go.
there you go.
All
Perfect. It's the perfect gift. Great. Everyone go out and get it right
yes,
now.
you really should. Like it's honestly amazing. Sometimes I have trouble like following like with audiobooks because I'm very much like a tangible in my hand kind of girl.
Me too.
And
Yeah. Me,
I'm definitely going to be getting both. It's on my like the physical copies on my
yeah.
Christmas
Oh,
list,
thank
but
you.
I couldn't wait. So, yeah. So you guys definitely should go out and grab it because, like, it's really awesome. And I'm not just telling you this because, like, oh my goodness, Faith Moore's right there.
I'm right here. I'm
Like,
right here.
she's
Yeah,
like
you
right
can't tell
there.
me if you hate it right now, but yeah, we can discuss that later.
Oh. Speaking of other books that I absolutely adored, I loved Saving Cinderella, What
Thank
Feminists Get Wrong, but Disney Princesses and How to Set It Right.
thank you.
I particularly appreciated how you showed how Cinderella was an allegory about Jesus.
Yeah.
Could you give us, for those of us who it's been a little while since we've read it or we haven't, I think her phone died. Hang tight real quick, guys. I think her phone might have died. Okay, guys, so I think her phone did die, but she's back.
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay.
An alarm went off in my phone.
Ah.
And it stopped everything. Sorry about that. Okay.
It's all good. It happens. I'm just glad you're back.
I'm very glad to be back. Okay. Cinderella, Jesus. That's what we're
Yes.
talking about.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So Cinderella, the Disney movie. I don't know that the Cinderella actual fairy tale, of which there are many, many versions. In fact, every culture on earth has some version of a Cinderella story. So to be clear, I was talking about just the Disney version of Cinderella. But I'm I think I'm the only person that has at least written about this when at least at the time, I wrote the book in 2018 and I kind of watched the movie again to write the chapter and it became very clear to me. And then I went on the internet and tried to find, there must be millions of articles about this and I didn't find a single one. So it might just be my own crazy theory, but
I can see it though. Like it made, like when I read it, it made perfect sense.
Okay, thank you. And I have to admit I'm quite far away from having written that book at this point, so I can't take you through moment by moment each sort of reason why it is related. But you should definitely, everybody should just go and read the book and find that chapter. I think it's chapter 2. There it is. Yes. So. But it's definitely there. And there are all kinds of other little sort of hints there, like the cat's name is Lucifer, and he gets kind of expelled at the sort of pivotal moment of Cinderella's kind of immersion as, like, not immersion, but as she emerges as her true self. And there are all these moments, like the moment, where she's in deep despair, in the same way of sort of Jesus on the cross. And again, obviously it's not the same to be Cinderella as it is to be Jesus, but I definitely think that Walt Disney, who was a huge part of that, he was part of the filmmaking process in that film and was a Christian himself. I think that he was absolutely trying to kind of make a Christian allegory out of that movie, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I can definitely see how, his faith influenced his career there. And if you guys haven't picked up that book yet, okay, here's the thing. I'm just going to go full transparency here. I have read a lot of things by Faith Moore, and I have never stumbled across one I didn't like.
Oh, thank you.
So,
That's nice. Thanks.
You're incredibly talented and brilliant and awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying so. That's lovely.
Well, thank you for your gift with the world. So speaking of how faith has, influenced Walt Disney's career, how do you think faith has influenced your career?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's certainly something that I write about a lot. I think, so I guess to sort of transition into Christmas Carol a little bit, the funny thing about Dickens A Christmas Carol, which obviously this book is based on,
Mm.
is that it is a very religious, very Christian story that doesn't really mention God or Jesus that much. You know, there's a couple of mentions
Yeah.
of God, and I think he goes to church at the end, and of course Tiny Tim says God bless us everyone at the end. But there are sort of these three spirits. Who are they? How do they fit into the whole thing? What is this kind of magical journey that he gets to go on? Is that in the Bible? What is this?
Yeah.
And yet it is a very, very Christian, very spiritual story. And that, I think, is the best kind of explanation for what I'm going for in my writing, in that I don't want to preach to anybody.
Mhm.
I don't want to preach to anybody in my life, and I don't want to preach to anybody in my writing. And I really hope that I'm not doing that, because I tend to think, and I know this is probably going to get me in some hot water, but like, I tend to think in general, let's just put it generally, that if
Mhm.
you tell someone, this is what you have to believe, they're probably going to run away, and they're probably
Yeah.
not going to believe in it or care. And
I can
and I
confirm as an ex-Jehovah's Witness who used to bother y'all on Saturday mornings.
exactly, right, exactly. So I also think that, like, as we were talking about before, like in my journey and with my kids and everything, like, I think people should be allowed to make their own choices, and that what I believe is not necessarily the thing that you have to believe. So in terms of my writing, it's more that I try to kind of imbue the world that I'm creating with a sense of that there is God, and that there is kind of spirituality, and that people
Mhm.
have souls, and all of those things. And in this book, in Christmas Carol, there's definitely a kind of undercurrent of
Yeah.
religion, and church is there, and all of these pieces, but it's very subtle. And even, I mean, no spoilers, but like, even at the end, like, it's not like, and I become a Christian, praise the Lord, like, it's not, it's not
Yeah.
that. And so I think it's a much more sort of understated, just sort of general worldview, that
Mhm.
I try to bring to my writing, rather than any kind of message or mission that I'm trying to convey.
I think the subtlety of the way you go about art is so I think it really enhances the message as opposed to detracting from the message, because not everybody who's going to read this tremendous book is going to have the same kind of precise worldview, but there's still lessons that you can very much take away from the book, even if you don't aren't the same denomination, or like even if you're not Episcopalian or Anglican or all sorts of different things like that. And I think that sometimes with having to like front load all of this stuff when it comes to religion, that we miss out on getting to share things that enhance other people's lives, because they feel like they have to be a Christian, do all of these things before they can benefit from like the kind of side effects of things. And sometimes the side effects of things, at least in like my case, is what can help you realize that, oh, hey, I benefited with like when I did this, and who does this kind of stuff? Oh, all of these wonderful people that like have helped me along the way. I should probably check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I would even take a further step back, which is that I'm not trying to do that. Like, I think if that happens, like, if somebody reads this book and they think like, that's an interesting way of thinking about the world, then great. Like, hooray. That's awesome. But like, I really believe that anybody who's writing fiction,
Mm,
who sets out with a message instead of a story, is not going to write a very good book. Like, I think that if you're writing a story because what you want to say to the world is, believe in Jesus Christ, like, if you want to say, like, accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, like, that's a good message. Like, I
yeah.
think you should do that, but I don't think you're going to have a very good book on your hands, like a good novel on your hands, if
Yeah.
that's what you're trying to do. Similarly, this book has a lot of themes about kind of working parents versus stay-at-home parents, and prioritizing family over prioritizing work. But like, if I was what I was trying to say is every mom should stay home with their kids, like, that would be a terrible book. I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
that. And those are things that you can say in a sentence. You can just say them, and then we can
Yeah.
have a conversation about that. But a novel is not that. A novel is a story, and it might have themes in it, and you might pull some message from it, but it's not necessarily what I was going for.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the sort of beautiful things about fiction, is that once, I tell the story and then you guys get to talk about what it means.
Yeah. That's something I've always really enjoyed. And I think no matter what book you're going through, whether you're going through, popular fiction or whether you're going through the Bible or, a common prayer book, it's all like different things speak to you in different seasons of your life.
For sure. Absolutely. And I know for a fact that this book is speaking to people in different ways. And I love that,
Yeah.
and people are seeing themselves in different characters, and pieces of themselves in different parts of the story. And I love that. And I think that's exactly what's supposed to happen.
So what would you like most, what would you most like readers to take away from Christmas Carol?
Ooh, that's a hard question because of what we are just talking about, because I think different people are going to take different things. And I certainly don't, I could have a whole bunch of talking points. Like, I hope that people um, kind of recalibrate or rethink their own relationship with their kids or with
Mhm.
their husband and their family, and maybe, but really, I just hope that people are immersed in the story. I hope that it is a complete world, a complete microcosm, that when you're reading it, you feel like you're really in it, and that
Yeah.
these people, and I hope that these people and these characters feel real to you, and in a way that, characters in a good book really feel. So that's really all I hope that people get out of it. I hope that they enjoy kind of living inside of my world that I created for however long it takes to read the book.
One thing I've noticed about myself when it comes to reading your works is that I read slower, but it's
Mm.
because like I'm rereading like sentences and like thinking about them and thinking about them and then like reading the next sentence and like moving on with it. Where because of the quality, it honestly takes me longer because I'm like, ooh, I love that. I need to remember that. And then I like read something 3 times.
Thank you. This is fantastic. Keep talking. No, just kidding. Well, that's great. I love that.
So let me know in chat if anybody else feels the same way or if they feel that with, any other author. Um, Now, quick question about this, and then we'll get back into talking about Christmas Carol. What's your favorite drink to? What's your favorite beverage to drink while writing?
Oh, tea. 100% tea, all the time. In fact, I have what I've realized is kind of a ritual. I didn't mean it to be a ritual, but
Mhm,
because I write when my toddler is napping, that's my
mhm,
main writing time. I have to
mhm.
switch gears very quickly from mom mode to writer mode, because I only have a certain amount of time, like about an hour of time. And so I have a little teapot that's like a one person teapot,
Mhm,
and a little teacup in a saucer. And I make tea. I like black tea, like English breakfast. I have
mhm.
the one that I drink most now is I think it's Tetley's. It's called British Blend.
Ooh, that's
And
so good. It's like one of the only
it's
black,
so
like directly
good.
black teas I like.
Yes, it is so
Yeah.
good. I take lots of milk, which is slightly embarrassing, and a little bit of sugar. And I love it. I'm really a tea fan.
Tetley teas are so good. They're the drink. There's like the teas that got me into drinking teas
Ooh, yeah.
because one of my papa's nurses, she went to London and she brought it back for us, and that's when we like fell in love with it.
Yes. Well, I think it's hard to have grown up in London and not come back with a sort of tea habit.
Yeah.
But I definitely, and I love a good afternoon tea. I always try to either go to afternoon tea or make afternoon tea as often as I possibly can.
I went to afternoon tea once, at this amazing like little boutique place where it was so cute. It was kind of in the middle of like suburban nowhere,
Uh-huh.
but it was
Love it.
amazing. I felt like a princess with my best friend when like the five of us all went. It was
Oh,
so
it's
great.
so good. I make it for like special occasions. It's actually what we we eat at Christmas. For Christmas dinner, we have
Mhm.
afternoon tea instead.
Oh,
Because
that's amazing.
yeah, we eat just with our family, and then we go to my family, and that's when we have like a normal Christmas dinner. But
Mhm.
on Christmas, we we eat afternoon tea, and we all love it.
I mean, that
Yeah.
sounds like perfect so that you're not like stuffing yourself before you're going to like all the different
Exactly.
places.
Yes, exactly. Although we have been known to stuff ourselves on afternoon tea as well
I
because
mean,
of all
like
the
valid.
sandwiches
It's
and cookies and
delicious.
stuff. Yeah. It's delicious.
So good.
Yeah.
Even though I like tea, I am a bit more of a coffee girl, and that's why I know my chat is as well. I wanted you guys in chat to know that since today's Giving Tuesday, North Arrow is actually donating 30% off to And Then There Were None Ministries, which provides financial, emotional, and legal support to anyone wishing to leave the abortion industry. And if you use code BASEDBABE, you can get 10% off. So all that information is down in the description below.
That is an excellent reason to drink coffee.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, everyone should do that.
Rob does some great work. The coffee is really good, and he actually has like all these like fun different flavors.
That's great. I'll have to check it out and give it as some gifts. That sounds good. I'm not a super big coffee drinker, but I definitely know people who would want that coffee. Yeah.
It's awesome. Plus he's like really nice. He's currently in school. I think he's getting his like masters or something to become like a some type of pastor thing. It
Great.
currently
That's awesome.
blanking. But yeah. Awesome dude. Solid product, solid guy.
Very cool.
Now, there was some discussion in here in chat earlier, but could you tell us the significance of the imagery on Christmas Carol's cover? And also, who made that? Because a lot of people in chat, myself included, like, love it.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not sure how much I can explain about it because I can take no credit at all. So the book is published by the Daily Wire, and the Daily Wire
Mhm.
has a artistic department that
Okay,
made
makes sense.
the cover. So it was made by people at the Daily Wire. I don't know. Sadly, I don't know their specific names, but they are fantastic over there. They do amazing artwork. I've seen other things that they've done, and it's great. They're great. So that is who made it. They did everything about the book. I mean, the book has
Mhm.
like red edges, right? And it
That's so
yeah,
cool.
no, the pages are like edged in red.
Nice. I
They
love edged pages. I have like a weird thing about them.
oh, it's fantastic. They did all the typesetting. There's like all this artwork in the book. Like the title page, there's all this stuff in the book, and they did all of that. So
Nice.
I think so. I was not there in the meeting, like when they decided what to put on the
Mhm.
cover, but my sense is it's sort of like Christmas future, present, and
Mhm.
past is kind of what's going on. I know that what they were going for was the kind of a sort of line from between
Mhm.
this and the Dickens and the kind of like spooky ghost sort of experience that happens in both stories. So
Mhm.
it definitely is kind of the ghost side. But for those who haven't read the book, please know that it is also a kind of hallmarky Christmas, like feel good experience to read the book. So it's not only, there are ghosts, but it's not only ghosts. It's also lots of Christmas trees and Christmas things. So
And don't worry,
yeah,
guys, it's not like super duper scary. I mean, I've gotten
it's
to like
scary.
halfway through the book, but I was the girl when Pirates of the Caribbean came out when I was 7, like the first one with Johnny Depp.
Yep.
I saw
Mhm.
the skeletons and I could not sleep for like a week.
That is very frightening. Yes, I completely, that is totally normal. I would also have been that scared. I think much older than you and was not a child. So I was like, but I also was scared. So yeah, it's not scary. So that
It's
is,
yeah.
but in a great way. But the book is not particularly scary.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's very like a chef's kiss kind of feel. It's like the importance and the heaviness and the intensity of what really matters, but also at the same time too, it's not like, oh, you're gonna like, if you read the book and like kind of have a like reading before bed ritual, you're not gonna like fall asleep and then like wake up going, "Ah, Faith Moore, the ghosts are gonna get me."
Yeah, exactly. No, I really hope that that's not going to happen. I wasn't going for spooky, actually. I was going for kind of like heartfelt nostalgia
Yeah.
kind of feel. Yeah.
There were some people who were like a little bit nervous, so I just like wanted to make sure we drove
Yes,
that
no,
point
I,
home.
I I agree. I mean, I've been kind of saying this all along, which is that like the cover is beautiful and very arresting, and it
Mhm.
and they did a fantastic job. And when I saw it for the first time, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. And so amazing cover. But if you're somebody that's like doesn't want to read a scary story and so this is freaking you out, please know that it's not a scary story. It's
Yeah.
much more like a feel good, like Hallmark movie kind of story.
Yeah. It's the kind of book that you like get your like cup of tea or cup of cocoa and like wrap a little Christmas blanket around yourself and like just dive right into.
Yes, it is like super super Christmassy, and
Yeah.
that's really that's what I was trying to pack as much Christmas into it as I possibly could. So yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna read this every single year.
That's amazing. I hope you do. People have been telling me that they're going to read it every year, and that just makes me so happy. It's like that's amazing. I love that. Yeah.
So one of the questions was if Christmas Carol were to be made into a movie, which I mean, let's be honest, a studio is missing out on it if it doesn't get turned into like an exquisite Christmas film. Who would you love to see cast in various roles?
Oh my gosh, that is so hard. And I actually have been thinking about that because people keep saying it would
Mhm.
make a good movie, and I agree. Like even when I was writing it, I was thinking, hey, this would be a good movie. Um, ugh, I really don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Like I don't even know who the actors are now. Like I feel like
Yeah,
I'm so
I
like all the actors are old, you know?
yeah, it feels like there's like the old set that I like grew up with, and then there's like
Yes.
these random little itty bitty babies who are like 12 that I don't know who they are.
I totally agree. And I think I'm too close to it to be able to answer that question because like in my
So
mind,
valid.
real people and which is a little insane, but they are.
Mhm.
Sorry. And so
Well, you did
I
such world building. I can totally see how they are real people because they feel like real people when like you step outside of the book and then you go back into it. You're like, oh wait, hold on, what's going on with them? I need to know. Like you're thinking about like texting a friend or something.
thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And it's for me, it's sort of like when I was writing them, they felt very real. So when it was over, I was kind of sad. Like I miss them. I
Yeah,
miss Bo in particular, Carol's husband. He was my favorite and I miss him. Yeah.
he he reminds me a lot of my husband in certain ways,
That's so nice. Your
and
husband's lovely.
he's my best friend, my number one obsession in this world. Like the thing I would
Yeah.
both kill and die for. He's tremendous,
Good.
amazing, like
Everyone's
best thing
husband
ever.
should be like, yeah.
And so yeah, that's why I'm like especially like really enjoying like the journey so far with the book and everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for putting this gift out into the world for all of us.
Oh, it was my pleasure for real. Yeah.
So, what was the hardest part about writing this book and then what was the easiest?
Okay. Good question. So I think the hardest part was just making sure that I was doing the Dickens story justice. I didn't want to say that this was a retelling of A Christmas Carol and
Mhm.
then like completely go off on some weird tangent that had nothing to do
Yeah.
with the story because this is a beloved story that I love and I know millions of people in the world love. And so I didn't want to like just crumple it up in a ball and throw it away. And
Yeah.
so I think that was sort of hard on the front end. Like I did a lot of planning work. Like I sort of
Mhm.
outlined, I reread the book, A Christmas Carol, and then I outlined it for myself. And then I outlined my own story in kind of like a weird spreadsheet where like all the emotional beats of this were here and mine kind of had to match up. And so I did that. And then
Mhm.
I did that with the characters. Like here are all of Dickens's characters. Here are all the characters that I'm going to relate to those characters
Mhm.
and how are they connected. So that I think was the hardest part going into it was kind of like, am I going to do this story justice? But I
Mhm.
might, but make it my own in some way. And how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
But so that was hard. But actually, it then made it kind of easy. I often struggle with plot, so
Mhm.
it was nice to have a plot that was kind of already made, which was kind
Mhm.
of cool. And then I think the easiest part I don't I think was just writing it. Like
Mhm.
I it's almost not like work. I mean, I don't want to say that exactly because it is work and I think that
Mhm.
some people who want to write kind of don't see that and they kind of have all these great ideas and then they don't actually sit down and put the time in
Yeah.
and so absolutely have to sit down and put the time in. But for me, once I was doing that, I keep saying it's kind of like being a Victorian medium,
Mhm.
like like at a séance, sort of like these characters are
Mhm.
kind of speaking through you, which sounds very woo-woo, and I'm not particularly woo-woo about writing. I feel like
No, but
I'm
like
very
I can
about it,
see it.
but it is kind of like these people, like these are people, but I don't. know them in real life. So, I mean, that was
Yeah.
just sort of joyful. And I was so, the process was so much more joyful because I was able to sell it to the Daily Wire before I had written it, which
Nice.
was such a beautiful and amazing. I'm so grateful to
Yeah.
them that they kind of took a chance, like, yes, okay, we want this story. And then to write something that I knew was going to see the light of day. You know, I've written a lot of novels that didn't see the light of
Mhm.
day. And so to know, like, as I was writing, that this was going to get out there in the world in some way was just so joyful because it's something that I'm going to do anyway. I have to
Yeah.
write, called to write.
Mhm.
And so to be able to write, sort of knowing like, oh, people are going to read this. This is great. Like, and I'm not going to have to put it in
Yeah.
my desk drawer and forget about it. I think so. I think that that made it easy. It made it sort of
Mhm.
really fun and exciting to just write every day.
That's really, really awesome. I oftentimes struggle with plot because the thing that I'm currently working on, which many interviewers in the past have asked me if I'm going to be inevitably working on, is a autobiographical type of work.
Great.
So
Yeah,
I
fantastic. Do
feel
it.
like sometimes I'm like too close to it, where it's like I just like need to take like a break from like going down that memory road.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
hard, I think, but it's also like you're emotionally connected to it, not just because it's your story, but because it's your actual like life
Yeah.
story. I think that that can be hard to do. That's a tricky one, but I definitely think you should do it. That sounds amazing.
Thank you. As far as Christmas Carol goes, do any of those like I mean, I know obviously like what the inspiration was and what the amazing, final product is, but do any of those things kind of mirror your own life in any way?
You mean like the story, anything in the
Yeah,
story?
anything in the
Um,
story.
I think that the character in the story who's most like me is Fran, Carol's sister. I don't want to give too many spoilers because I know that
Mhm.
not everybody has read or finished the book, but um, Carol, I guess we can say this. I mean, Carol is the Ebenezer Scrooge
Mhm.
character, and and she's she's a miser, not about money, which is what Scrooge is a miser about, but about time. So she's
Yeah.
not spending time with her family. She's kind of in this hard charging kind of girl boss mentality.
Mhm.
And then her sister Fran is kind of the opposite of that. She wants um she wants a home and a husband and kids and is kind of bumping up against, I mean, she's bumping up against Carol, who for a
Mhm.
variety of reasons that I won't spoil is kind of telling her that she can't do that. But also she's kind of bumping up against the world, right? Because the
Yeah.
world tells you that you're supposed to do what Carol does, which is kind of like get your
Yep.
degree and then get another degree and then, get a career and then
Yeah.
climb the career ladder and, get to the top and then sort of
Yeah.
stay there in this kind of weird, hard charging way. And, oh,
Yep.
and get married and have some kids along the way. But that's fine. They'll go to daycare.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the current narrative that women are being soul, and it's kind of a radical thing to step outside of that and say like, oh, I don't think I want that. And again, like, not everybody should or whatever. I have nothing to say about what other people should do, but for me, like,
Mhm.
I never wanted that for myself. I wanted to write and I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a husband and home and
Yeah.
kids. That's it. And I'm so blessed and lucky that and grateful that that's what I get to do with my life.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think it was Fran. People keep asking me like, so which part of Carol is you? And I feel like
Mhm.
no part of Carol is me, but a lot of Fran is me. And I think it's really that piece of the story that has
Mhm.
to do with my own life, which is kind of like that way in which we're sort of channeled into this narrative.
Mhm.
And I kind of like I went a different direction,
Yeah.
and I think the story is kind of is grappling with that. It's grappling with kind of what we're expected to do as women
Yeah.
and what we maybe end up choosing to do instead.
It hit very, very close to home because I kind of grew up with like the girl boss narrative, not having a lot of like matriarchal figures in my life. Girl
Yeah.
bossed a little too close to the sun during the pandemic, got diagnosed with two, now three different autoimmune diseases.
Oh man.
And yeah, and I'm still like maintaining on Dean's List in pretty much like my senior year of becoming like an HR person with like a double minor in psych and project management. And I'm
Wow.
like, I
Okay.
don't want to do that anymore. But it's like, I'm so close to the end that it's like, okay, like we'll figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know. And
Yeah.
I think, like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying anything about what they should do, but also that I'm saying like, and if you did that, that's wrong. You know, like I'm not saying
Different
that at
things
all.
work for different people and different family structures.
Completely. And you know, I can tell people what I'm doing in my family, but that's not right for everyone. And I can tell you what's going on in this story, but
Yeah.
that's not telling you what to do either, you know?
Exactly. I mean, different people have different priorities and different things work better for different families in different seasons. Like sometimes it might look the exact opposite, and that's okay as long as you have the priorities that you're focusing on and you're locked in on them and you're taking care of them. And
Yes.
I think that that's the kind of freedom of expression and like that kind of container of that, I guess, like mental exploration that you allow us to go on in this journey. And that's something I really, really appreciate.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad that that carries through. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I
I just invited you on here to compliment you.
appreciate that. Please continue.
Oh, so yeah, there are a bunch more Twitter questions and there are some memes. But before we get into the Rumble section, everybody make sure you like and subscribe. If you want to come back next week, we have some exciting stuff to tell you at the end of this episode. So you'll definitely want to be subscribed to this channel. But Faith, could you say a prayer to close this episode out? And then if you could stick around, we'll get to the Rumble section.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank
I
you.
will do my best here. Okay. Dear God, thank you for this time that we've spent together. Thank you for this connection that we have made, all of us, in this experience together over the last hour and however long it's been. Thank you for bringing those of us to you who found you later in life. And I pray that those who are seeking find you as well. And I pray that you answer the prayers that we don't always know to pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I feel like sometimes when, like, God is so good that he knows us so well as his creation that sometimes when our mouths are like saying one thing, kind of going back to when we were talking about that original prayer for you, our hearts are saying something totally like different, like on a different page. And the fact that, he answers the ones that are really going to be best for us is such a beautiful gift.
Yeah, no, I pray that every day. I pray, please, Lord, answer the prayer I don't know to pray, because I know that I don't have the whole picture and he does. So it's like, I'm asking for things, or I'm grateful for things, obviously, but I'm asking for things, but they might be the wrong thing,
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, it really is. And then my friend Annie, tuning in from Australia, says intercession prayer through the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, from Australia.
It's so cool. She's originally from here. I adore her. She's awesome. But I won't gush to you about that.
Okay.
So we will be right back in the Rumble section. Let's check in on the app formerly known as Twitter. Thank you. I wrote that this afternoon. I'm like, I need some type of intro for it.
Love that. And I don't know. We should all have that. The app formerly known as Twitter. Love it.
And Annie from Australia says welcome. And then my husband says all the way from a country that doesn't exist, because there's Australia and Ohio for some reason.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, I didn't know there was that animosity there, but I'm here for it.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of really awesome questions. Thank you so much to chat. Thank you so much to those of you who submitted questions on Twitter who are going to be watching us back later. Thank you for watching and thank you for submitting your questions. So one of the questions is, what writer do you most admire and why? And that's from Oscar Progresso.
Okay, great question. So 2 answers. I'll say one living and one dead. So the living author that I most admire, that I most admire, is Curtis Sittenfeld, who is a woman, even though her name is Curtis, and she has written several books that I just love. Eligible is the one that most relates to this because it's a modern
Oh my
retelling.
gosh! I've
Pride and
read
Prejudice.
that book. I
Okay,
loved that
yeah,
book. I was obsessed with
yeah.
it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, she's a fantastic writer. I disagree with her completely on politics, but I don't care because she just as a writer, like if you're trying to write in the genre that I'm trying to write in,
Mhm.
it's like a master class. I mean, she writes in this the voice that she writes in is like different for each book, but it's amazing. She wrote this book called Rodham, which is about Hillary. It's a novel about if Hillary Clinton didn't marry Bill, which I
Ooh.
resisted reading for a long time because I don't care about
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton at all and don't really
Yeah.
want to spend a bunch of time inside her head. But the voice, she gets her voice so right, and it's an amazing. If you're a writer, it's just
Mhm.
amazing to read. So I love her. And then as the dead author is Charlotte Bronte because my favorite book of all time is Jane Eyre, and I'm hoping in the new year to do something that has to do with Jane Eyre. So if anybody is a Jane Eyre fan, please watch my space, whatever my space is. Watch this space because that book is just again a sort of like masterclass in like
Mhm.
emotion and just like people's emotion and also like uh, infusing faith and spirituality into
Mhm.
a story but without banging you over the head with it is
Yeah.
awesome. So I'm gonna go with those two.
I love it when I dive deep into a book and then I come out the other side like forever changed because I understand more about myself and I understand more about the world at large. And that's one of the things that Saving Cinderella honestly really did for me.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's so lovely. Yes. Jane Eyre does that for me.
Yeah.
I've read it like 500 times and I own 4 copies of it, which is kind of excessive. But yeah.
Well, if you ever, need to do some like Marie Kondoing, like I'll send you my address.
Great. Yes, I know. Well, they all have like significance to me. I can't get rid of them. Like they all like
I know. I'm just teasing.
no, I know, but I should get rid of them,
Yeah.
but I yeah.
Yeah. I have certain books that like I always get to like chapter 5 and then life happens.
Yeah, but well, the
Yeah.
thing is, like, I feel like at this point, I'm not. I'm too old to like read a book that I'm not really into. So I
Yeah.
definitely endorse like stopping reading a book if it's not the thing that you want to be reading.
That one's been on my like own it, need to read it for forever
Well,
now and I can't wait until like I graduate college because then I'll actually get to like read what I want to read like
yeah,
even to like a more fuller extent.
yeah. Well, wait, if you're in school and you're reading stuff for school, it's very hard to read anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the questions was from Magaman, but I think you answered it. What was your inspiration behind Karol?
Oh, the character Karol.
Mhm.
It had to do with what was going on during the pandemic. I've talked about this other places. I won't go into it like super detailed, but because I
Mhm.
know we're in the rapid fire questions section of
Yeah.
this episode. But basically, she came to me because I was watching all of the working parents come home during the pandemic and
Mhm.
try to parent and work and grapple with what it means to quote unquote have it all when you can't really
Mhm.
have it all. And so that was kind of my inspiration for her, and I linked it to the Scrooge story because that
Mhm.
story is sort of really big in our family. We watch the movie every Christmas. And so that arc seemed like a good arc to put that character on, and sort of
Uh,
have her
yeah,
figure that out.
I can see that. And Alex, I know you're Megman 28. If you read her Evie article, that was just released this past month, she goes into it even more and she does a really great job of like explaining how all of those connections work. And that's a really great interview. So
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, that is out there. And pretty much, I think any interview I've given at this point, probably I talk about the pandemic thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so this one is from someone in chat that has been waiting patiently for me to get to it. So thank you, Joaquin, for waiting. I appreciate you. In Saving Cinderella, how are you able to distinguish the literal from the symbolic elements in a story?
Ooh, okay. So this is an interesting question. So I
Mhm.
guess oh, hold on. I'm gonna while I'm talking to you, I'm gonna
Mhm.
go into my computer because I think my phone's running out of batteries and I'm going to I'm gonna have to go away and come back in just a second.
Okay,
Um,
no worries. I
but
have some memes that we need to get to anyways.
okay, good. You can get to your memes. Hold on. I'm just
Yeah,
going
no
to
worries.
do this now. Uh Okay, actually, maybe let's do that. Let's do your,
Okay.
let's do your memes, and I'm going to come right
Okay.
back. Okay,
Okay. Awesome.
be right
Sounds
back.
good. Okay, so we have some super awesome memes that I am excited to share with you guys. Thank you so much, Jess, for these. You are amazing. Brother, the Godfather has landed. I'm not going to attempt to do an Italian accent. It's never worked out well for me. But that's an awesome meme. America! Fuck yeah! Which, Faith should see this one. Hey, Faith, look at this meme.
Wait, what am I looking at? Oh, wait, hold on. There's like a thing. Oh my gosh! There's like a notification above my face. That's creepy. Take that away. Oh my god.
Oh. But yeah, that's...
Okay. I'm here again. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. It's
Okay.
all good.
Okay, so, right. Oh, wait, are we on memes or are we on me?
We're on you.
Okay, great. What we were talking about...
In Saving Cinderella, how are you able to distinguish the literal from the symbolic elements in a story?
Right. Okay. So the background here is that the sort of thesis of Saving Cinderella is that we have forgotten how to read fairy tales because fairy tales are not meant ever to be taken literally, but that is what the kind of like woke feminist circle wants to do. They want to be like, ew, like he kissed a dead lady and that's not okay because she couldn't consent or whatever. And that's not true because those things are not supposed to be taken realistically. They're supposed to be viewed symbolically. So I think a couple things. One is I think that any story has a fair amount of kind of metaphor or symbolism inherent in it because a fictional narrative is not, even the most realistic narrative is not really something that could happen in real life because it's kind of like tied up with a pretty bow. Like it's kind of like encapsulated in this world of this story. And so even if it's not a story like Christmas Carol where supernatural things happen, even if it's a very realistic story, the author, if they're doing a good job, is kind of crafting a narrative that works with certain themes or, you know, is going in a certain place. So you're always kind of taking a story with a little bit of the kind of symbolic, metaphorical kind of lens. But I also think that if you're in the realm of fairy tale, you're always in the realm of allegory and metaphor. So I think that's a sort of easy one. So in Saving Cinderella, I was dealing with Disney princess movies, which are almost exclusively based on fairy tales. There are a few that are based on kind of weird historical things like Pocahontas or Mulan or whatever that are not really true, but are. And in those cases, I felt that the Disney princess kind of entity lived within the fairy tale structure, even when they were pulling in these other stories to turn them into princesses. And because I felt that like when you call someone a fairy tale princess, then you're within the realm of what it means symbolically to be a fairy tale princess. So I think, you know, if you're asking like, how do you know if something is an allegory or not? I think, well, if it's a fairy tale, then it is. And also, I think if it's a story that's kind of, this is strange, but like if it's a story that's kind of weird, like it's not, weird stuff is happening, animals are talking, magic is happening, you know, you're probably dealing with some amount of metaphor or symbolism there. But even a world, a sort of fictional world that looks very much like our own is a crafted story meant to kind of, it's not meant to have a message, but it's meant to sort of, you know, convey a kind of symbolic truth about whatever it is that the author is writing about. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think that does a great job of answering the question.
Thank you. Okay, good.
And he also asked, what will be the fateful hour when the Daily Wire empire will be ready to acquire some of your creative power?
Oh boy, I don't know if I even know what that means. Like if
like when are you going to join Daily Wire?
I don't know. They're not asking me. I'm very happy to be published by them. I hope that I can do this again. I hope I can write another one.
I love the way he writes questions. He always like has questions for my guests, and they're always like amazing.
I love it. That's great.
He's a great dude. How do you know when a book that you're working on is done? And that was by Caveat Ties.
Ooh, that's a good question. So it becomes a lot easier if you've written an outline to begin with. I'm a big, big believer in outlining. So if you have written an outline, you at least know when you're done with the first draft because you got to the end of the story. Then I also am a big believer in like editing the heck out of it, like sort of ripping it to proverbial shreds and then putting it back together in new ways. I think that you know that it's done when the changes that you're making aren't actually making it better, they're just changes. So I think, you know when like, oh wow, this really isn't working. I need to fix this. So then you fix it. And, but then if you're just kind of rearranging things for the sake of it, and then what you have to do at that point is show it to somebody else. And the somebody else that you show it to has to be somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. So not like your husband or your friend who loves you but doesn't really know anything about writing. Like you have to show it to somebody who really knows their stuff about writing. And if you don't have anyone like that, you have to hire that person. Like you have to find someone who can tell you what to do. And then they'll give you notes and then you follow those notes and then you're probably done.
That's a really solid one. It kind of reminded me of like, that kind of seems like the literary version of, when like you're a girl, obviously when you're a girl,
Yes.
when you're getting like ready to go out somewhere and then like you accidentally give yourself too much time and then you're at like the 9th hour and then you're like doing some random like makeup thing and you're just like, I do not need to be doing this.
Yes, I don't need this. Right.
Yeah.
And you probably look worse because you've like done too many things to yourself. Yeah. It's, Yeah.
Totally not my first Christmas with my husband. How do you stay inspired and focused while writing a book? And that's by Heather Mama.
I am blessed with the fact that I don't have very much time. And so I made a commitment that the time that I have, which is usually my kids' nap time, is my work time. And, I don't check social media. I don't do any of that. I don't check my email. I don't do any of that. I turn everything off and I work for that amount of time. But I also think like part of that is the planning that I was talking about, like the outlining and the kind of character descriptions and things like that you do beforehand, because that tells you if this is a story that you want to spend time with. Like if you're writing a full length novel, you're going to be in it for probably close to a year. And so you need to know before you start whether this is a world that you want to live in for a year, if these are people that you want to hang out with for a year. And that pre-planning stuff really helps with that, because once you've done it, you're like, oh, this is cool. I really want to explore this. And then you do. And if you have an outline, even if it sort of changes a little here and there, because stories do have a way of getting away from you and characters have a way of not wanting to do what you ask them to, which is very weird, but it's true. Even then, you can kind of say, okay, well, we're not going this way, but here's the rest of the outline. And you kind of know where you're going. So you're not stuck. You don't really get stuck if you have that planned out in advance. So I think it's really about the planning and about the kind of like making sure that you've picked a story that you want to stick with.
That's really awesome. Hope that helps, Heather Mama. So Pro-Life Sam asked, best advice for someone interested in learning how to write, and do you have any resources that come to mind that would be helpful? I took a, gander at your site, and I know you have a lot of great stuff there.
Yes. So I have several resources that I hope will help you. My other hat that I wear, my mom hat is my biggest hat. My novelist writer hat is my second biggest hat. But then my other hat is editor, and I edit people's writing as a job. And so because of that, I have several things on my website that might be helpful. My website is faithkmoore.com. And then on that website, there's two tabs that might interest you. One is called editing services, which if you want to hire me to edit your work, that's where you go to learn more about that. I will say though, I'm booked through June of next year, which is insane. So if you want to get on my calendar, let me know. But I also have a tab called writing courses, I think is what it's called. And I have a couple things there. One is a whole free series of videos called How to Write Fiction, which takes you through the whole process that I was just talking about of kind of how to come up with your idea, your outline, your characters, et cetera, all the way to writing. And that's there and it's free. Each video is like 5 minutes. So shouldn't take you very much time. And then I sort of sporadically teach live classes. Those videos are for sale. But I think it's like $10 a video or something like that. And you can kind of see on that page, on the Story Club Live page, which is the live classes, you can see what all is there. And some stuff is on my YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. You can just find me, Faith Moore, on YouTube. And some stuff is free that's up there. So I hope that is helpful. Was there another part of the question? How to get started or something?
Do you have best advice for someone interested in learning how to write? And do you have any resources that come to mind that would be helpful?
Okay.
So
actually one of those $10 videos is called How to Actually Sit Down and Write. And so I guess I just suggest that if you have $10, that you buy that. And you know what? And even if you don't, just tell me that you watched this and I'll just give it to you.
And she also asked this question that really interests me as well. Now that I'm a mom, looking back at some of these Disney movies, I just don't think I'd love my children to watch them. Not all of them, just some. For example, Pinocchio is drugs, drinking, child trafficking. It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Am I being overdramatic? Are there any older Disney movies that you'd probably not let your younger children watch?
So I think that's really valid. It's way more valid than I don't want my kid to watch Cinderella because, she gets rescued by a man or whatever, which isn't true. And I watched Pinocchio, which is a movie I loved as a kid, by the way, like loved as a child.
I was obsessed with it.
Totally obsessed with it. I watched it with my older kid when he was much younger, like 4 or 5. And I was kind of like, whoa, like what is going on Pleasure Island? Like, what is this? So I think that's totally valid. And I think that it's kind of like at each person's discretion, like you go back and watch it and decide. There's some weird stuff in Peter Pan too. I don't really censor that stuff in my house because I feel like those older Disney movies do kind of have they are sort of the gold standard of kids television and movies, and they do kind of have my stamp of approval. And I think that stuff kind of goes over the heads of kids who are too young to understand it. Like, I really don't think, like, when my kid watched Pinocchio that he had any clue about the smoking and the drugs and the weird stuff there. Same with Peter Pan and some of those other ones. So I think you're probably okay to show them, and they'll take from them the kind of lovely parts of the story and not the weird stuff. But also, like, that's totally, you're allowed to not show things to your kids that you think are inappropriate. So I don't think you're like totally off base. I think there are some weird stuff because, in the past they had really different ideas about what was okay to show to kids. And so if that doesn't jive with what you feel like is okay to show to kids, then, definitely wait. So I think that's valid, but I also think it's probably not going to register with your very young children.
Yeah, I went through a phase where, like, I was obsessed with it, and then I turned, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 or somewhere in there, and then I would cry every time I saw him get turned into a donkey.
Yeah, because it's really scary.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, like, terrifying. Yeah, because when you're a little kid, you're like, oh, a donkey. Like, I might want to be a donkey. Like, I mean, because, like, when you're, like, 3, you're, like, pretending to be a donkey all the time. You're like, I'm a unicorn today. I'm a donkey. Like, whatever. But then when you're older, you're like, wait a minute. Ew, like, he's really turning into a donkey. So yeah. And then I think, like, when your kids are older, then those are conversations you can have. Like, look at what they were doing. Look, that's so gross. Like, you shouldn't, you should listen to your parents and not run off with strange cats or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Answered Tater said, The Rescues has something to say about Disney, and then Swimhook and Whiskey Biz say Fantasia is supposedly an acid trip, and so is Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
For sure. I have, I think, never seen Fantasia all the way through because I keep falling asleep. I think you really probably have to be on drugs. I've never done drugs, but I really think that you probably have to be in order to enjoy that movie.
Yeah. Something for sure.
Yeah.
And then are there certain fairy tales that are inherently better or worse than others, or should they all be appreciated equally?
That sounds like a sort of like a preference thing. Like so fairy tales, I mean, I think it's tricky with fairy tales. Like, there are books that are objectively bad. Like, there can be, like, objectively bad writing and therefore the book is bad, or there can be books that are, like, so degraded, they have, like, weird stuff in them that's so icky and awful that makes the book bad. But mostly I think other than that, I think it's a sort of matter of taste. And fairy tales they come out of an oral tradition. So they can't really be badly written, like they're
Yeah.
written down by usually the Brothers Grimm. And then of course there are others that may or may not be, like Beauty and the Beast is not one of those. And all of the Hans Christian Andersen stories are original to him. So there are several like that. And then there are certain versions of Cinderella that don't come out of the Grimm's tradition. But I think with fairy tales, it's more, it's sort of less like bad and good, but rather like what speaks to you and what doesn't speak to you, because they all have kind of themes that are sort of allegorically and symbolically represented. And some things might interest you more than others or speak to you more than others. So I think that in that sense, it's more like a preference thing.
Yeah, I would agree. What are some of your favorite books for tween girls, and are any of those about horses or snowmen?
Ooh, okay. So I have two boys, so this is a little tricky for me, and the things that I'm going to say here are probably very old, but that doesn't make them bad. There's a book called The Snowman Who Couldn't Melt. Speaking of snowmen, that's what you said, snowmen, right? Horses.
Yeah,
or
snowmen.
Okay, so there's a book called The Snowman I think it's called The Snowman Who Couldn't Melt. I'm looking because I actually might have it on my shelf. But I won't bore you by looking for it. I can't remember the author, but I remember liking that as a tween girl. And horses, I'm not going to be very helpful about horses. I mean, there's like Black Beauty and what's the other one? National Velvet, I think, are
also Horse Diary,
good.
Like a diary of a horse or something.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I was never really a horse person, so I don't know for sure. And then just generally like books for that age group, there's the Anastasia series by Lois Lowry, which I loved as a kid. And then A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, I think are good for that age. A Little Princess is better, I'm sorry, than The Secret Garden. I know The Secret Garden is like the famous one, but A Little Princess, like my copy of A Little Princess is here, and it is like I don't know if you can see how like beat up it is. Like it's so beat up because I love that book so much. So yeah, I'm sorry to not be more helpful because I'm sort of going off of myself as a tween, as opposed to kind of what is out there now. I used to teach third grade, but like I think it was all sort of Harry Potter. Yeah. It was all sort of Harry Potter and things like that. So I hope some of those are helpful.
I also went through, I know they're not about horses or snowmen, but I also went through like a very much in old classics.
Yeah.
When I was in like the tween range, I was like, oh, now I have like a good enough reading skill so I can read classic books. And
Yes.
I was obsessed with The Indian in the Cupboard, and I totally loved Heidi.
Yes.
I read that so many times it fell apart.
Those are great. And there's like, so growing up in England, sorry, we're all getting over this weird cough.
It's all good.
Growing up in England, Enid Blyton is a children's author for both genders, I guess, but she has the Mallory Towers series. It might be like too British, like, but basically what's cool about it is that Harry Potter is based on this type of fiction, which is the type it's called the school stories, which is about kids at 12 years old who go off to boarding school, which is a thing in England. And so the Mallory Towers books are like just like Harry Potter, like each grade that this particular character, Daryl Rivers, goes through. And so that it's funny because Americans don't understand this, but the genius of Harry Potter was that she was telling a school story, which is a genre of book, except it was magic. So anyway, so Enid Blyton might be something to check out if you're not weirded out by the Britishness of it all.
Oh, I prefer the Britishness of some things and of like the old schoolness. Like I was obsessed with Trixie Belden. Do you remember those at all?
I didn't read them, but I know what they are. But yeah.
Yes. And then one of the there's two more questions, and then how do you feel about shows that are good and then go woke?
I think that's sad. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I have a sort of like fair amount of tolerance for like, whatever. I'm a sucker because like if I like it to begin with, I'm gonna watch it till the very end. Like my favorite show of all time is Downton Abbey, and it really kind of jumped the shark at a certain point, but I couldn't stop watching it. So, I feel like there's no shame in keeping watching, even if it goes woke. But that's too bad, because if it was a good show to start with, then it's sad when that happens.
I mean, I feel like you just come to care for like Elizabeth and like all of the different other characters and like what's going on in their lives, and it just, you get sucked in. You're like, I need to know what happens. Does Matthew die?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Spoiler.
Yeah, but you really do need to know. Yeah.
And then the last question is, what is your favorite color?
Blue.
Same. And the person who asked me this is going to get on my case if I don't ask the follow-up of what shade.
Ooh. I don't know. I like light blue, but I also like a good kind of like sort of rich, like royal blue. Yeah. That's an interesting question.
It's been a thing since the very first time I started the show.
Cool.
So
I love it. Great.
So all of the links for you can be found below, just so everybody in chat knows. Would you like to tell us where we can find you next week at roughly this time?
Right, yes. Next week I will be on the book club with Jess. What is it called? The Hawkhound Book Club?
The Hawkhound Book Club.
Okay, so I will be on the Hawkhound Book Club, which I'm very excited about. Yes, at roughly the same time. I think it's 7:30. I'll have to.
Yeah, 7:30.
Jess, okay,
Yeah,
7:30. That is where I will be. So, and we will talk much more about Christmas Carol. I'm excited.
Yeah. Jess and Elise are amazing. You're absolutely going to love them. I'm actually, guys, I knew you have good taste.
Yes, thank you.
They're two of my dearest friends. So because of that, and because I want to see the whole interview and everything live, and I'm sure a lot of people who like crossover wise, I'm actually going to be taking next week off so that I can be in the chat live, and then
oh my gosh, that's so sweet. That's lovely. Sorry to disrupt your schedule.
No, I mean, I probably need a week off anyway.
Yes, you deserve a week off. You deserve a break.
I did last Tuesday right before we got in the car that very morning, the next morning, and like drove all the way to Maine. So, Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Answered Satyr. Thank you so much. He said, excellent interview, Freda. Thanks, Faith.
Wait, what?
I got a $10 Rumble rant from Answered Satyr, and
it's
one of my first ones.
Good job. Well done.
And so, thank you so much. We'll resume Finding the Faith on December 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a conversation that I'm quite excited about, and I hope to see all of you there. And then remember, all of the important links are in the episode description below. So thank you so much for coming on Finding the Faith.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I found you.
Yes, that's right. Here I am. Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. Thank you.
It was so fun. Stay based and stay blessed, everyone.